On a rain-soaked night in Riverside, Oregon, a single father watched a powerful CEO walk past his gate in an elegant black dress, heading toward what looked like her final night alive. Ethan Cole didn't know Charlotte Vale personally, but the emptiness in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. Within hours, he would be racing across town through a storm, breaking into her world of corporate towers and crushing loneliness, trying to pull someone back from the edge before it was too late. This is their story. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And don't forget to hit that like button. Now, let's begin. The rain came down in sheets that Thursday evening, drumming against the roof of Ethan Cole's small house like 1,000 impatient fingers. He stood at the kitchen window, watching the water cascade off the gutters, forming muddy rivers along the cracked driveway. The mug of coffee in his hand had gone cold an hour ago, but he hadn't noticed. Lately, Ethan didn't notice much beyond the narrow circle of survival he'd drawn around himself and his daughter. "Daddy, can I have more juice?" Lily's voice pulled him back to the present. She sat at the kitchen table, her small legs swinging beneath the chair, not quite reaching the floor. 8 years old, with her mother's dark curls and his own stubborn chin. The sight of her still caught him off guard sometimes. How much she'd grown. How much she looked like Sarah. "Sure, sweetheart." Ethan set down his mug and reached for the refrigerator. "But just half a glass. It's almost bedtime." "I'm not tired," Lily protested, even as she rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know," Ethan said, pouring the juice carefully. "You're never tired. That's what you tell me every night." She grinned at that, showing the gap where her front tooth had fallen out last week. The tooth fairy had left $2 under her pillow, all Ethan could spare after paying the electric bill. Lily hadn't complained. She never did. That was the thing that broke Ethan's heart most. How good she was. How patient with the hand life had dealt her. No child should have to be that understanding. He carried the juice to the table and kissed the top of her head. "Finish that up, then teeth in bed. I'll come read to you in 10 minutes. Can we read 2 chapters tonight?" "We'll see." Lily knew that meant yes. She drank her juice in quick gulps while Ethan returned to the window. Outside, the storm showed no signs of letting up. The street was empty except for the pools of yellow light beneath the street lamps and the occasional car passing by, headlights cutting through the rain like knives. Riverside, Oregon wasn't much. A small town that had seen better days, where the mill had closed 15 years ago and half the businesses on Main Street had boarded up windows. But it was home. It was where Ethan had grown up, where he'd met Sarah at the county fair when they were both 17, where they'd planned to raise Lily and maybe a brother or sister for her someday. Those plans had died 2 years ago on a Tuesday morning when Sarah's car hydroplaned on the highway and wrapped itself around a pine tree. Ethan closed his eyes against the memory. The doctors had said she didn't suffer. He'd never believed them. How could someone so full of life just stop without suffering? "Daddy, I'm done." He opened his eyes. Lily stood beside him now, holding up her empty glass like a trophy. "See? All gone." "Good girl. Go brush your teeth. I'll be up in a minute." She bounded toward the stairs, her footsteps surprisingly loud for such a small person. Ethan listened to her climb, heard the bathroom door close, heard the water start running. The sounds of normalcy. The sounds that kept him going. He turned back to the window, and that's when he saw her. Charlotte Vale walked past his gate like a ghost in the rain. Ethan recognized her immediately, though they'd never actually spoken. She was impossible not to recognize. Even here in Riverside, even in this forgotten pocket of Oregon, people knew who Charlotte Vale was. Her face had been on the cover of Forbes twice. She'd built vision tech from a garage startup into a company worth billions, revolutionizing cloud computing infrastructure or something like that. Ethan didn't pretend to understand the details. What he understood was power, and Charlotte Vale had plenty of it. She'd moved to Riverside 6 months ago, buying the old Morrison estate at the end of Maple Street, a sprawling 3-story house that had sat empty for years after the original owners died. The town had buzzed with speculation. Why would someone like Charlotte Vale, who could live anywhere in the world, choose to live here? Privacy, some people said. Tax shelter, others insisted. Running from something, the bartender at Murphy's had muttered darkly. Ethan hadn't cared enough to speculate. Rich people did what they wanted. It didn't affect him either way. But now, Watching Charlotte walk past his house in the pouring rain, he felt something shift in his chest. Something was wrong. She wore a black dress, elegant, expensive, the kind of thing you'd wear to a gala or a board meeting. It clung to her frame despite the rain, and her heels clicked against the wet pavement with metronomic precision. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she carried a small clutch purse in one hand. She looked like she was going somewhere important. But her face? Ethan stepped closer to the window. He could see her clearly now beneath the street lamp. Her makeup was perfect, her posture straight, her expression carefully neutral. To anyone else, she would have looked fine, composed, in control. But Ethan had spent 2 years learning to recognize the mask people wore when they were barely holding themselves together. He saw it in the mirror every morning. He saw it now in Charlotte Vale's eyes. She walked with the measured steps of someone who'd made a decision, a final decision. Their eyes met for just a moment as she passed his gate. She paused, almost imperceptibly, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Not of Ethan specifically, but of being seen, really seen. "I have somewhere important to go," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear, carrying across the rain-soaked space between them. Ethan didn't know what to say. He raised one hand in an awkward half-wave, and Charlotte nodded once before continuing down the street. Her heels clicked away into the darkness. He stood there for a long moment after she disappeared, staring at the empty street. The rain fell. The street lamps hummed. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and fell silent. "Daddy, I'm ready!" Lily's voice snapped him back. Ethan shook his head, trying to dispel the uneasy feeling settling in his gut. It wasn't his business. Charlotte Vale was a stranger, practically a different species from him. Whatever was happening in her life, she had people to help her. Staff, assistants, expensive therapists. She didn't need a broke mechanic with grease under his fingernails and a daughter to take care of. "Coming, sweetheart," he called, forcing his voice to sound normal. He climbed the stairs to Lily's room, where she'd already picked out the book they were reading, The Secret Garden. They were halfway through, and she was obsessed with the idea of finding a hidden door in their house, convinced there must be some secret room somewhere. "Just one chapter tonight," Ethan said, settling into the chair beside her bed. "But, Daddy, one chapter. We'll read more tomorrow, I promise." Lily sighed dramatically but snuggled under her blanket. "Fine, but tomorrow we read 3 chapters. We'll see." He opened the book and began to read, letting the familiar words wash over him. Mary Lennox discovering the hidden garden, finding beauty in unexpected places, learning that even the most neglected things could bloom again with care and attention. The story had always made Sarah cry. "It's about hope," she'd said once, "about second chances." Ethan's throat tightened. He kept reading. 20 minutes later, Lily's breathing had evened out into the soft rhythm of sleep. Ethan carefully marked their place and set the book on her nightstand. He pulled the blanket up to her chin and kissed her forehead. "Sweet dreams, baby girl," he whispered. He left her door cracked open the way she liked it, enough to let in light from the hallway, but not enough to keep her awake. Then he made his way back downstairs. The house felt too quiet suddenly. Ethan turned on the television just for noise, some late-night talk show with canned laughter and celebrity interviews. He wasn't really watching. His mind kept drifting back to Charlotte Vale, to the look in her eyes, to the careful way she'd walked past his house like someone heading to an execution. "I have somewhere important to go." The words echoed in his head. He told himself to let it go. He had enough problems. The truck needed new brake pads. The roof had started leaking in the back bedroom. Lily needed new shoes. She'd been squeezing her feet into her old ones for weeks, insisting they still fit, but Ethan could see her wince when she walked. He couldn't afford to worry about a billionaire CEO who'd chosen to take a walk in the rain, but he couldn't shake the feeling either. At 11 o'clock, Ethan's phone buzzed. He picked it up, expecting a spam call or maybe his boss reminding him about the early shift tomorrow. Instead, he saw a message from Caleb Morrison. Caleb had been Ethan's best friend in high school, back when they'd both been on the basketball team and thought they'd conquer the world. Life had taken them in different directions. Ethan to community college, and then the auto shop. Caleb through a series of odd jobs before landing work as a private driver for corporate types in the city. They didn't talk much anymore, just the occasional text or beer when Caleb was back in town. But they were still friends, the kind that picked up where they left off, no matter how much time had passed. The message was brief. She's at her sister's house. She's not okay. Ethan stared at the screen. He didn't need to ask who she was. Somehow, he knew. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on, "What do you mean, not okay?" The reply came immediately. Just, "Not okay. Thought you should know. You're good at this kind of thing." Ethan frowned. "Good at what kind of thing?" "Helping people. Being there. You were there for me after Dad died. That had been 5 years ago. Caleb's father had passed from a heart attack, sudden and devastating, and Caleb had fallen apart. Ethan had shown up every day for 2 weeks, not saying much, just being present, making sure Caleb ate, making sure he didn't drink himself into oblivion, just being there. That was different, Ethan typed. "I knew your dad. I don't know Charlotte Vale. You know what it looks like when someone's drowning. I can see it in her. Thought maybe you could too." Ethan set the phone down and ran both hands through his hair. This was insane. Charlotte Vale wasn't his responsibility. She had resources, connections, people whose actual job it was to help her. But Caleb's words stuck with him. You know what it looks like when someone's drowning. He did know. He'd been drowning himself for 2 years, ever since Sarah died. Some days he was still drowning, just treading water, keeping his head barely above the surface for Lily's sake. And he'd seen that same look in Charlotte's eyes tonight. "Where's the sister's house?" he typed before he could talk himself out of it. Caleb sent an address. Ethan recognized it. Brookwood Avenue, about 20 minutes away in the nicer part of town. The kind of neighborhood where the houses had 3-car garages and landscaping services. "Thanks," Ethan sent back. Then, after a pause, "How do you know where she is? I drove her there 2 hours ago. She told me not to wait, but I parked down the street anyway." Something felt off. "You still there?" "Yeah, just sitting in the car. I don't know what to do. Go home," Ethan typed. "I'll handle it." Even as he sent the message, he wondered what the hell he thought he was going to handle. He was a mechanic who could barely keep his own life together. What could he possibly do for someone like Charlotte Vale? But he was already reaching for his keys. He checked on Lily one more time, still sleeping peacefully, her stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest, and left a note on the kitchen table just in case she woke up. "Had to run out. Be back soon. Love you, Daddy." Then he grabbed his jacket and headed out into the rain. The drive to Brookwood Avenue took him through the heart of Riverside and then into the hills where the town's remaining wealthy families lived. The streets here were wider, the houses set back from the road behind iron gates and tall hedges. Ethan's truck felt conspicuously old and loud, the engine rattling as he climbed the winding roads. He found the address Caleb had sent, a large colonial-style house with white columns and perfectly manicured lawns despite the rain. Charlotte's car, a sleek black Mercedes, was parked in the circular driveway. Ethan pulled up to the curb and killed the engine. He sat there for a moment, rain drumming on the roof of the truck, asking himself one more time what he thought he was doing. Then he opened the door and stepped out into the storm. The front walkway was lined with decorative lanterns that cast warm pools of light across the wet flagstones. Ethan's boots left muddy prints as he approached the door. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. What was he going to say? "Hi, I'm a complete stranger who happened to see you walk past my house and decided to follow you because you looked sad." That sounded insane. That sounded like something a stalker would say. Before he could decide, the door swung open. A woman stood there, mid-40s, with Charlotte's same dark hair but softer features, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She looked Ethan up and down with obvious confusion. "Can I help you?" she asked. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm looking for Charlotte Vale." The woman's expression shifted to concern. "Are you from the company? Did something happen?" "No, I'm not. I'm a neighbor from Riverside. I wanted to make sure she was okay." The woman studied him more carefully now, taking in his worn jacket, his work boots, his uncombed hair. She was clearly trying to decide if he was dangerous or just strange. "Rebecca? Who is it?" Charlotte's voice came from somewhere inside the house. It sounded tired, hollow. Rebecca, the sister, Ethan assumed, glanced over her shoulder, then back at Ethan. "Stay here," she said, and closed the door partway. Ethan stood on the porch, listening to the muffled conversation inside. He couldn't make out the words, but he heard Charlotte's voice rise in surprise, then fall to something quieter. A moment later, the door opened fully. Charlotte stood there instead of her sister. She'd changed out of the black dress and into jeans and a simple gray sweater. Her hair was down now, falling in damp waves around her shoulders. Without the makeup and the business attire, she looked younger and more exhausted. "Ethan Cole," she said slowly, as if testing the name. "From Maple Street. You know my name." A small, sad smile touched her lips. "I know everyone on my street. I don't talk to them, but I know their names. Sarah's widower, Lily's father. The mechanic who works too many hours and never remembers to fix the fence post that's been leaning for 6 months. Ethan felt heat rise to his face. "I've been meaning to get to that fence. I'm sure you have." Charlotte leaned against the doorframe. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" It was a fair question. Ethan wished he had a good answer. "I saw you tonight," he said finally, "walking past my house, and you looked... I don't know. You looked like I've felt every day for the past 2 years. And a friend told me you were here and that you weren't okay, and I couldn't ignore it." Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Rebecca hovered in the hallway, clearly worried. "You should go home," Charlotte said softly. "Your daughter needs you." "She's asleep. She's fine." "Then you should still go home. I'm not your problem to solve." "I'm not trying to solve anything," Ethan said. "I just thought maybe you could use someone to talk to. Someone who isn't trying to fix you or save you or get something from you. Just someone who gets it." "Gets what?" "What it feels like when you're so tired of pretending that you start to wonder if it would be easier to just stop." The words hung in the rain-soaked air between them. Charlotte's eyes widened slightly. Rebecca took a step closer, her hand rising to her mouth. "Charlotte," Rebecca said quietly, "please, let him in. Let someone help." Charlotte looked at her sister, then back at Ethan. Something crumbled in her expression, not breaking, but softening, the mask slipping. "I don't need help," she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. "Maybe not," Ethan agreed, "but maybe you need someone to just sit with you for a while. That's all I'm offering. I'll leave whenever you want me to. No judgment, no expectations." Charlotte's shoulders sagged. She looked so small suddenly, despite being tall and successful and powerful. She looked exactly how Ethan had felt in the weeks after Sarah died, like she was held together by nothing but sheer willpower and the fear of what would happen if she let go. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." She stepped aside and Ethan entered the house. The interior was beautiful. High ceilings, tasteful furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than Ethan made in a year. But it felt cold somehow, unlived in, like a hotel rather than a home. Rebecca guided them to a living room where a fire crackled in a stone fireplace. Charlotte sank onto a leather couch, and Ethan took a chair across from her. Rebecca brought coffee, real coffee, not the instant stuff Ethan drank, and then excused herself, though Ethan could tell she was just in the next room listening. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. They just sat there, the silence broken only by the rain against the windows and the pop and hiss of the fire. Finally, Charlotte said, "There was an event tonight, the Technology Leadership Forum. Black tie, 500 people, most of them worth more than small countries. I was supposed to give a keynote speech about innovation and leadership and the future of enterprise computing." She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "I got dressed, did my makeup, practiced my speech in the mirror, and then I walked out of my house and just kept walking. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand in front of those people one more time and pretend that I have it all figured out, that I'm happy, that any of it matters." Ethan sipped his coffee, letting her talk. "Do you know what it's like," Charlotte continued, "to have everything you thought you wanted and realize it means nothing? I built Vision Tech from scratch, 18-hour days, 7 days a week, for 15 years. I fought and clawed and sacrificed everything to get here, and now I'm here, and I'm so fucking lonely I can barely breathe." Her voice broke. She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking. Ethan set down his coffee and moved to sit beside her on the couch. He didn't touch her, didn't try to comfort her with empty platitudes. He just sat there, close enough that she knew she wasn't alone. When Sarah died, he said quietly, everyone kept telling me it would get better. That time heals all wounds, that I'd find meaning in the grief. And I wanted to punch every single one of them. Charlotte lowered her hands and looked at him. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged. Did it? Get better? Some days I wake up and I can breathe and remember the good things without feeling like I'm drowning. Other days I'm right back in that hospital room watching them turn off the machines. He paused. But I'm still here, and so is Lily, and that has to mean something, even when it doesn't feel like it does. I don't have a Lily, Charlotte said softly. I don't have anyone. I chose this life. I chose the company over everything else, over relationships, over family, over any chance at a normal existence. And now I'm 43 years old and so successful that I don't even know how to have a conversation with another human being without it being a negotiation or a power play. You're having one right now, Ethan pointed out. She smiled faintly. I suppose I am. They sat together as the fire burned down and the rain finally began to ease. Charlotte told him about her childhood, growing up with Rebecca in a small town not unlike Riverside, their father dying when they were young, their mother working 3 jobs to keep them fed. About how Charlotte had promised herself she'd never be powerless, never be at the mercy of circumstances she couldn't control. So I controlled everything, she said. Every aspect of my life, my company, my image, and somewhere along the way I forgot how to just be, how to exist without performing. Ethan told her about Sarah, about falling in love at 17 and thinking they had forever, about Lily's birth and how terrified he'd been, about the accident and the impossible weight of raising a daughter alone. I'm not doing a great job, he admitted. Half the time I have no idea what I'm doing, but I show up every day and I try, and that has to count for something. It counts for everything, Charlotte said. Don't you see? You built something real, a life with meaning, love, purpose. I built a corporation, stock prices and market share and quarterly earnings. What's that worth when you're standing in your empty house at 3 a.m. wondering why you even bother? What is it worth? Ethan asked gently. Charlotte was quiet for a long time. I don't know anymore. Tonight, driving here, I kept thinking about what would happen if I just kept driving. If I disappeared, the company would survive, probably thrive without me micromanaging everything. Rebecca would be sad, but she'd move on. The world wouldn't even notice. I would notice, Ethan said. She looked at him in surprise. Why? You don't even know me. Because I saw you tonight. Really saw you, and I know what it costs to keep going when everything inside you wants to quit. And I know that the world needs people who understand that cost, because they're the only ones who can recognize it in others. Tears spilled down Charlotte's cheeks. I'm so tired, Ethan. I'm so tired of being strong and capable and in control. I just want to rest. Then rest, he said simply. Not forever. Not like you were thinking when you walked past my house tonight. Just for now. Just for tonight. Let yourself rest. Charlotte leaned her head against his shoulder, tentatively at first, as if she'd forgotten how to accept comfort, and then more fully as Ethan didn't pull away. They sat like that while the fire died to embers and the rain outside faded to a whisper. Rebecca appeared in the doorway at some point, saw them sitting together, and quietly retreated. I was going to drive to the coast, Charlotte said eventually, her voice barely audible. There's a cliff there, about 2 hours north. Beautiful view. I thought it would be a good place. Ethan felt his chest tighten. And now? Now I'm sitting here talking to a mechanic I barely know, crying into his shoulder, and somehow that feels more real than anything in my life has felt in years. Maybe that's what you needed, something real. Maybe. She sat up, wiping her eyes. I should let you go home. Your daughter is safe and asleep and fine, Ethan said. I'm not in a hurry. They talked for hours more, about small things and big things, about Lily's missing tooth and Charlotte's first company, which had failed spectacularly when she was 25, about Sarah's laugh and Rebecca's kids and the strange paths life takes. As dawn began to color the windows, Charlotte looked different, not fixed. Ethan understood better than anyone that broken things don't mend in a single night, but softer, more present, as if she'd remembered how to be human instead of just a corporate icon. "I should probably call the forum organizers," she said. "Explain why I didn't show up. Or not explain. I'm not sure I owe them an explanation." "You don't owe anyone anything except yourself," Ethan said. "When did you become so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who figured out that the only way through is through. There's no shortcut past grief or loneliness or any of it. You just have to keep walking." Charlotte reached out and took his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you, Ethan, for seeing me, for not looking away." "Any time," he said, and meant it. As Ethan stood to leave, Rebecca appeared with his jacket, dried and smelling faintly of lavender from whatever fancy machine she'd run it through. She gripped his arm tightly. "Thank you," she whispered fiercely. "I've been trying to reach her for months. She wouldn't let me in. But somehow you—" "Sometimes strangers are easier," Ethan said. "Less history, less expectations." Rebecca nodded, tears in her eyes. "Will you come back, check on her?" "If she wants me to." "I want you to," Charlotte said from the couch. She looked exhausted but more alive than she had hours ago. "I could use a friend who doesn't want anything from me except honesty." Ethan smiled. "I can do that. But fair warning, if we're going to be friends, you're going to have to tell me what the hell cloud computing infrastructure actually means, because I've been pretending to understand for years." Charlotte laughed, a real laugh, startled and genuine. "Deal." Ethan drove home through the gray early morning, the streets empty and quiet. The storm had passed completely now, leaving everything washed clean and smelling of rain and pine. He thought about Charlotte, about the cliff she'd been planning to drive to, about how close she'd come to a decision that couldn't be undone. And he thought about the strange timing of it all, how he'd happened to be looking out his window at exactly the right moment, how Caleb had happened to send that text, how all the small choices had aligned to bring him to her door. Sarah used to say that everything happened for a reason. Ethan had stopped believing that when she died. What reason could there possibly be for taking a 32-year-old mother away from her daughter? But maybe, he thought, maybe some things happen not for a reason, but to create one. Maybe him being there tonight had given Charlotte a reason to stay, and maybe helping her had given him a reason to remember that he was more than just a grieving widower and an overwhelmed father. Maybe they'd both needed saving, and somehow they'd managed to save each other. When he got home, Lily was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, still in her pajamas. "Where did you go?" she asked, around a mouthful of Cheerios. "I had to help a friend," Ethan said, kissing the top of her head. "What kind of help?" "The important kind." Lily considered this. "Like when you helped Mrs. Patterson fix her sink?" "Sort of, but this was fixing something on the inside instead of the outside." "Oh." Lily took another bite of cereal. "Is your friend okay now?" Ethan thought about Charlotte's tears, her laughter, the way she'd gripped his hand before he left. "She's getting there," he said. "We all are." The weekend passed quietly. Ethan worked Saturday morning at the shop, came home to make lunch for Lily, and spent the afternoon helping her build a fort out of blankets and chairs in the living room. Normal things. Simple things. The kind of moments that used to feel tedious but now felt precious, ever since that night at Rebecca's house. He hadn't heard from Charlotte since leaving her at dawn on Friday. Part of him wondered if he ever would. Maybe she'd wake up embarrassed about breaking down in front of a stranger. Maybe she'd retreat back into her polished executive persona and pretend that night had never happened. But Sunday afternoon, while he was washing dishes and Lily was coloring at the kitchen table, his phone buzzed. The message was from an unknown number. "This is Charlotte. Rebecca gave me your contact. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? I'd like to talk. Somewhere quiet, if possible." Ethan dried his hands on a towel and stared at the screen. His first instinct was to say no. He'd done his good deed, helped her through a crisis, and now they could both go back to their separate lives. He had enough complications without adding a billionaire CEO to the mix. But then he remembered her face in the firelight, the raw vulnerability in her voice when she'd admitted how close she'd come to driving off that cliff. She wasn't asking for anything complicated, just coffee, just conversation. "Joe's Diner on Main Street," he typed back. "Tomorrow at 10, it's quiet on weekday mornings." The response came immediately. "Perfect." "Thank you, Ethan." He set the phone down and found Lily watching him with curious eyes. Who was that? She asked. A friend. We're going to have coffee tomorrow. What friend? A new friend. Her name is Charlotte. Lily's eyes widened. Is she your girlfriend? What? No, sweetheart. She's just someone I'm helping out. That's what Uncle Caleb said about Jenny before she became his girlfriend. Ethan couldn't help but laugh. It's not like that. Charlotte is just going through a hard time, and I'm being a good neighbor. Okay, Lily said, but she had that knowing look that 8-year-olds sometimes got, like they understood more about the world than adults gave them credit for. Monday morning arrived gray and cool, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened more rain. Ethan dropped Lily at school, watching until she disappeared through the double doors with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Then he drove to Joe's Diner, a small restaurant that had been serving Riverside since before Ethan was born. The breakfast rush had ended, leaving only a few scattered customers nursing coffee and reading newspapers. Ethan chose a booth near the back, ordered coffee from Marlene, who'd been waitressing there for 30 years, and waited. Charlotte arrived exactly at 10, dressed in dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. She wore sunglasses despite the overcast day, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without the designer suits and perfect makeup, she could have been anyone, just another woman stopping for coffee on a Monday morning. But Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes scanned the diner before she approached his booth, assessing and cataloging like someone who'd learned never to let her guard down completely. Hi, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Hi, coffee? Please, Ethan signaled Marlene, who brought another mug and the pot. Charlotte wrapped both hands around the cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. I wasn't sure you'd actually come, Charlotte said after a moment. Why wouldn't I? Because most people, after a night like Friday, would run in the opposite direction. I unloaded a lot on you. A stranger, basically. Sometimes strangers are easier to talk to, Ethan said, echoing what he'd told Rebecca. Charlotte smiled faintly. I keep telling myself that. It doesn't make it less mortifying. Don't be embarrassed. I've been where you were. Maybe not exactly the same place, but close enough. She studied him over the rim of her cup. You mean after your wife died? It wasn't a question. Ethan nodded. The first year was the worst. I had Lily to take care of, which gave me a reason to get out of bed every morning. But there were nights when she was asleep and the house was quiet, and I'd think about how easy it would be to just not wake up, to let someone else take over, to stop fighting so hard. What stopped you? Lily. The thought of her waking up and finding me. The thought of her growing up thinking I'd abandoned her like her mother had, even though Sarah didn't choose to leave. I couldn't do that to her. Charlotte's expression softened. You're a good father. I'm a struggling father. There's a difference. Maybe they're the same thing. They fell into silence as Marlene returned to refill their cups. The diner's old jukebox played something by Johnny Cash, mournful and steady. I called my therapist, Charlotte said suddenly. First time in 6 months. I have an appointment Wednesday. That's good. Is it? I'm not sure talking about my feelings to someone who charges $400 an hour is actually helpful, but Rebecca insisted. Rebecca cares about you. I know, I just hate being someone who needs caring about. I spent my whole life being self-sufficient, independent, the one who takes care of problems, not the one who creates them. Ethan leaned back against the booth. You know what I learned? Asking for help isn't weakness, it's just being human. We're not meant to do this alone. I've always done it alone. How's that working out? Charlotte laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. Point taken. She told him about the weekend, how she'd spent Saturday sleeping for 14 hours straight, her body finally catching up to weeks of insomnia. How Rebecca had come over Sunday with her kids, and Charlotte had played board games with them for the first time in years, remembering what it felt like to laugh without calculation or performance. They're good kids, Charlotte said, 7 and 9. They don't know who I am beyond Aunt Charlotte, who lives in the big house. They don't care about vision tech or quarterly earnings. They just wanted me to play Monopoly and not take it too seriously when the youngest decided to make up her own rules. Kids have a way of cutting through the bullshit, Ethan said. They really do. Charlotte paused, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I keep thinking about what you said, about showing up every day and trying, It sounds so simple, but it's not, is it? No. Some days showing up is the hardest thing you'll ever do. I don't know if I remember how to show up for myself. I know how to show up for board meetings and product launches and investor calls. But for myself? I've been running on autopilot for so long, I'm not sure there's anything underneath. There is, Ethan said with certainty. I saw it Friday night, the real you, not the CEO version. She's still in there. Charlotte's eyes grew bright with unshed tears. What if I don't like who that is? Then you figure out who you want to be and work toward that. But you can't do it by pretending you don't have needs or feelings or limits. Trust me, I tried that route. It doesn't work. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easier now. Charlotte asked about Lily, what she liked, what she was learning in school, whether she remembered her mother. Ethan found himself telling stories he hadn't shared in years. About Sarah's terrible singing voice and how she'd belt out songs in the shower anyway. About the time Lily was 4 and decided to give the dog a haircut. About small, perfect moments that made up a life. You miss her, Charlotte observed. Sarah. Every single day. But it's different now. The grief doesn't swallow me whole anymore. It's just there, like an old scar. Still tender sometimes, but I can breathe around it. How long did that take? I'm not sure there's a timeline. Everyone says 2 years, but I think it depends on the person. Some days I'm fine. Other days something small, a song on the radio, the smell of her perfume on someone passing by. And it hits me all over again. Charlotte nodded slowly. I think I've been grieving too, not for a person, but for the life I thought I'd have, the one where success would make me happy, where reaching the top would feel like arriving somewhere instead of just standing alone on a mountain. That's the thing about mountains, Ethan said. The view might be impressive, but you can't live up there. Eventually you have to come back down to where people are. Is that what you think I should do? Come down. I think you should do whatever makes you feel alive again. If that's staying at Vision Tech and finding a way to make it meaningful, great. If it's walking away and doing something completely different, also great. But you can't keep climbing just because it's what you've always done. Charlotte was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee. When she looked up, there was something different in her expression. Not quite hope, but perhaps the shadow of it. The possibility. Would you want to have dinner sometime? She asked. With Lily, I mean. Rebecca keeps saying I need to spend more time around normal people doing normal things. A family dinner seems about as normal as it gets. Ethan hesitated. Not because he didn't want to, but because he wasn't sure what he was agreeing to. Was this friendship? Was Charlotte looking for some glimpse into a life she'd never had? Was he being used as some kind of living therapy exercise? But then he looked at her face, hopeful and vulnerable in a way he suspected most people never saw, and realized it didn't matter. She needed connection. He understood that need. And maybe Lily would enjoy having another adult around who wasn't a relative or teacher. Sure, he said. How about Tuesday night? Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and whatever vegetables I can convince Lily to eat. That sounds perfect. They exchanged numbers, real numbers this time, not passed through Rebecca, and made plans. As Charlotte stood to leave, she paused beside the booth. Thank you, Ethan, for not treating me like I'm fragile or like I'm some kind of charity case. You're not either of those things. You're just someone trying to figure it out, same as the rest of us. She smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it reached her eyes. After Charlotte left, Ethan sat alone in the booth for a while, finishing his coffee and trying to understand what had just happened. In the span of 4 days, he'd gone from complete stranger to confidant to dinner host for one of the most powerful women in tech. It didn't make sense. But then, nothing about the past 2 years had made sense. Life had a way of throwing curveballs when you least expected them. Tuesday afternoon, Ethan left work early to prepare dinner. He stopped at the grocery store, where Mrs. Chen at the checkout recognized him. You're buying the fancy pasta, she observed, ringing up the fresh linguine instead of his usual dried spaghetti. And real Parmesan. Special occasion? Just a friend coming over for dinner. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose. A friend? Anyone I know? I don't think so. She's new to town. She, is it? Mrs. Chen grinned. About time, Ethan. Sarah would want you to be happy. Ethan felt his chest tighten. It's not like that. Just dinner. Mm-hmm. That's what they all say. He escaped with his groceries before Mrs. Chen could interrogate him further, but her words lingered. Would Sarah want him to be happy? Would she be okay with him having dinner with another woman, even if it was completely platonic? The rational part of his brain knew Sarah would hate the thought of him being alone. She'd told him as much during those awful last days in the hospital when they both knew she wasn't coming home. "Promise me you won't shut down," she'd whispered, her voice already fading. "Promise me you'll let people in. Let Lily see you happy again." He'd promised, though at the time he couldn't imagine ever feeling anything but grief. Now, cooking in his small kitchen while Lily did homework at the table, Ethan wasn't sure what he felt. Not happiness, exactly, but something lighter than the weight he'd been carrying, something like possibility. "Is Charlotte really coming?" Lily asked, looking up from her math worksheet. "Yes, sweetheart. In about an hour." "Should I change my shirt? This one has marker on it." Ethan smiled. "That's probably a good idea." Lily scrambled upstairs, and Ethan heard her rummaging through drawers. She came back down wearing her favorite dress, purple with white flowers, the one she saved for special occasions like school plays and visits to Sarah's parents. "You look beautiful," Ethan said, and meant it. "Do you think Charlotte will like me?" The question caught Ethan off guard. "Of course she will. Why wouldn't she?" Lily shrugged, suddenly shy. "I don't know. She's important, right? You said she runs a big company." "She does, but that doesn't make her better than anyone else. She's just a person, Lily, just someone who could use some friends." "Okay." Lily twisted the hem of her dress between her fingers. "Daddy, are you lonely?" Ethan stopped stirring the sauce. "What makes you ask that?" "You're always working or taking care of me. You never see anyone except Uncle Caleb sometimes. And I heard you crying last month when you thought I was asleep." His heart broke a little. He tried so hard to hide his struggles from her, to be strong and steady. But of course she'd noticed. Kids always did. He crouched down to her level. "I'm okay, baby girl. Yes, sometimes I get lonely, sometimes I miss Mommy so much it hurts. But I have you, and that makes everything better. You're the best part of my life, you know that?" Lily threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Daddy." I love you too." The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Charlotte stood on the porch holding a bakery box and looking nervous in a way that was oddly endearing. She'd dressed casually again, jeans and a soft blue sweater, but Ethan could tell she'd agonized over the choice. "I brought dessert," she said, holding up the box. "I didn't know what Lily liked, so I got an assortment, cookies, brownies, and some kind of chocolate tart thing." "You didn't have to do that." "I know, but I wanted to." Ethan stepped aside to let her in. Charlotte paused in the doorway, taking in the small living room with its worn furniture and Lily's toys scattered across the floor. The contrast with her own pristine house must have been stark, but her expression showed only warmth. Lily appeared from the kitchen, suddenly shy. She half hid behind Ethan's leg, peeking out at Charlotte. "Hi, Lily," Charlotte said softly, kneeling down to the girl's level. "I'm Charlotte. Your dad told me a lot about you." "He told me about you too," Lily said quietly. "He said you needed friends." Charlotte laughed, surprised. "He's not wrong. I do need friends. Would you like to be my friend?" Lily considered this seriously. "Do you like unicorns?" "I love unicorns. Did you know my company's first office had a unicorn painted on the wall?" "Really?" "Really. It was supposed to represent doing impossible things. Unicorns aren't real, but we believed in them anyway." That broke the ice. Lily emerged from behind Ethan and led Charlotte on a tour of the house, chattering about her stuffed animals and her favorite books, and the fort she'd built last weekend. Charlotte listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Lily's stories. Watching them together, Ethan felt something shift in his chest. This was what he'd been missing, not romance, but connection. The simple pleasure of sharing a meal with someone who wasn't family or obligation. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Lily insisted on showing Charlotte how to twirl spaghetti on her fork properly, which led to Charlotte deliberately doing it wrong and making Lily dissolve into giggles. They talked about everything and nothing. Lily's school play, Charlotte's first job washing dishes at a restaurant, Ethan's terrible attempts at teaching himself to cook when Sarah first got sick. You really put salt in the coffee? Charlotte asked, incredulous. I thought it was sugar, Ethan defended. The containers looked the same. How did it taste? Like regret and ocean water. Even Lily laughed at that, and the sound filled the kitchen like music. After dinner, while Ethan cleared the plates, Charlotte and Lily settled on the living room floor with the dessert spread out between them. Through the doorway, Ethan watched Charlotte carefully cut a brownie into small pieces so Lily could sample each one. This is important, Charlotte said seriously. Scientific method. We need to test each option thoroughly. What scientific method? Lily asked. It means being very careful and thoughtful about testing things. Like when you try to figure out which dessert is best, you have to try them all and really pay attention to the taste. Oh, okay. Lily bit into a cookie. This one is good. What makes it good? Describe it for me. It's chocolatey and kind of chewy, and it has chunks of chocolate inside the chocolate. Excellent observation. Now try the tart. Ethan smiled to himself as he washed dishes. He'd expected awkwardness, Charlotte not knowing how to interact with a child, but she was natural with Lily, treating her like a small person with valid opinions rather than talking down to her. When the dishes were done, Ethan joined them in the living room. Lily had declared the brownies the winner but wanted to conduct further testing tomorrow. It's almost bedtime, Ethan said. Can Charlotte read to me? Lily asked. Ethan glanced at Charlotte, ready to make excuses, but she was already nodding. I'd love to. What are we reading? The Secret Garden. We're almost done. They all went upstairs, squeezing into Lily's small bedroom. Charlotte sat in the chair beside the bed while Lily snuggled under her covers. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, listening as Charlotte began to read. Her voice was different than in the diner or at Rebecca's house. Softer, more open. She did different voices for the characters, making Lily giggle, and she paused at all the right moments for dramatic effect. Ethan found himself caught up in the story even though he'd heard it dozens of times. Something about hearing Charlotte read it, this woman who'd almost given up on life just days ago, made the themes of renewal and hope feel more powerful. When the chapter ended, Lily's eyes were already drooping. One more? She asked sleepily. Tomorrow, Ethan said. Say good night to Charlotte. Good night, Charlotte. Thank you for reading to me. Thank you for letting me, Charlotte said, and Ethan heard the emotion in her voice. Downstairs, Charlotte lingered by the door, her jacket in her hands. Thank you for tonight, she said. I can't remember the last time I had dinner that felt like home. You're welcome any time, Ethan said, and surprised himself by meaning it completely. Charlotte hesitated, then said, Would you and Lily want to come to my house this weekend? I thought maybe we could do something fun. I have a huge backyard that's completely wasted on me. Lily could explore. Maybe we could have a picnic if the weather holds. You don't have to I want to, Charlotte interrupted. Please, let me do this. Ethan studied her face and saw only sincerity. Okay. Saturday afternoon? Perfect. After she left, Ethan stood in the quiet house, processing the evening. In the span of a week, his carefully controlled life had opened up in ways he hadn't anticipated. It was unsettling and comforting at the same time. He checked on Lily one more time before bed. She was fast asleep, her stuffed rabbit clutched in her arms, a small smile on her face. What do you think, Sarah? He whispered to the darkness. Am I doing the right thing? The house didn't answer, but somehow Ethan felt less alone than he had in months. Saturday arrived with unexpected sunshine, the clouds parting to reveal a brilliant blue sky. Lily bounced around the house all morning, alternating between excitement and anxiety about visiting Charlotte's mansion, as she'd started calling it. What if I break something? She worried as Ethan helped her into the truck. You won't break anything. And if you do, we'll apologize and figure it out. Charlotte isn't going to be mad. How do you know? Because she's our friend. That's what friends do. The Morrison estate looked different in daylight, less imposing, more like an old house that had seen better days and could use some life breathed back into it. Charlotte met them at the door wearing jeans with grass stains on the knees and a smile that transformed her entire face. I've been gardening, she explained, or attempting to. Turns out I know nothing about plants. My mommy knew about plants, Lily said. She used to grow tomatoes. Ethan tensed, waiting to see how Charlotte would handle this. Did she? Charlotte asked gently. What else did she grow? Herbs, for cooking, and flowers that smelled really good. I don't remember what they were called. Lavender, maybe? Or roses? Lavender, that was it. Charlotte led them through the house to the backyard, which was indeed massive. At least an acre, with old trees and overgrown flower beds and a stretch of lawn that hadn't been mowed in weeks. I fired my landscaping service, Charlotte admitted. They kept everything too perfect, too controlled. I wanted to see what would happen if I just let it grow. It's beautiful, Ethan said, and meant it. There was something wild and free about the space, full of possibility. Lily immediately ran off to explore, her earlier nervousness forgotten. Charlotte had set up a picnic blanket under a massive oak tree, with sandwiches and fruit and lemonade in a glass pitcher. "This is nice," Ethan said as they settled on the blanket. "Really nice." "I'm trying," Charlotte said quietly, "to do normal things, to remember what it feels like to just exist without a schedule or agenda." "How's it going?" "Terrifying, but good. I had my therapy appointment Wednesday, and Dr. Morrison—" "Any relation to Caleb?" "Her daughter, actually. Small world." "Anyway, she said I've been using work as an avoidance mechanism, that I packed my schedule so full there was no room to feel anything. And now that I'm finally slowing down, all those feelings are catching up." "That sounds exhausting." "It is, but it's also honest, which is more than I've been with myself in years." They watched Lily climb a tree, her purple dress billowing around her legs. She called down to them about birds' nests and interesting bark patterns, delighted by every discovery. "She's wonderful," Charlotte said. "You're doing an amazing job with her." "I'm doing my best. Some days that's all I've got. That's all any of us have." The afternoon passed in comfortable ease. They ate sandwiches and talked about small things. Charlotte asked Ethan about his work, genuinely interested in the mechanics of fixing cars. He asked her about vision tech, and she tried to explain cloud computing in terms that made sense. "So basically, it's like having a really big filing cabinet that everyone can access from anywhere," Ethan ventured. "That's actually not a terrible analogy. I'm using that in my next presentation." Later, while Lily explored the far end of the yard, Charlotte turned to Ethan with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," she said. "The board called an emergency meeting yesterday. They're concerned about my absence from the forum, about me canceling meetings. There are rumors about my stability." Ethan felt anger rise in his chest. "It's fair," Charlotte interrupted. "I haven't been stable. I've been barely functional for months, and they're right to be concerned. But I told them the truth, that I was dealing with personal issues and taking time to address them properly, that I'd be back when I was ready." "How did they take it?" "Some of them understood, others think I'm weak. There's already talk about replacing me as CEO." "Can they do that?" "Technically, yes. I own the majority of shares, but there are clauses about competency and leadership. If they can prove I'm unfit—" She trailed off. "What are you going to do?" Charlotte looked toward Lily, who was now making a flower crown from dandelions. "I'm going to take the time I need, and if they remove me, maybe that's okay. Maybe I've been holding on to something I should let go." "Is that what you want?" "I don't know yet, but I'm trying to figure out what I want instead of what I think I should want. That's progress, right?" "That's huge progress." They sat in silence, watching Lily play. The sun was warm, the grass soft beneath them, and for the first time in recent memory, Ethan felt something close to peace. "Can I ask you something?" Charlotte said eventually. "How did you know you were ready to move forward after Sarah died?" Ethan thought about it carefully. "I'm not sure I ever decided I was ready. One day I just realized I was still here, still breathing, and I had a choice. I could stay stuck in that moment, standing in the hospital, watching her slip away, or I could choose to keep living, not for me necessarily, but for Lily. And then somewhere along the way, I started living for me too." "Do you think you'll ever love someone again, the way you loved her?" The question surprised him. "I don't know. Part of me thinks what Sarah and I had was once in a lifetime, but another part thinks that's giving up, that love isn't finite, that maybe there's room for different kinds of love." "Different, not less?" "Exactly." Charlotte pulled her knees to her chest, resting her chin on them. "I've never had what you and Sarah had. I've had relationships, but they always came second to work. I'd cancel dates for meetings, cut vacations short for conferences. Eventually, people stopped trying. It's not too late, Ethan said. You're only 43. Sometimes that feels ancient, like I missed all the important milestones and now I'm just watching from the sidelines. Then get off the sidelines. You're sitting here right now, aren't you? Having a picnic, spending time with people who care about you. That's not sideline behavior. Charlotte smiled. When did you become my life coach? I'm not qualified for that. I can barely manage my own life. You're managing better than you think. Lily ran back to them, breathless and holding her dandelion crown. Look what I made. Can I put it on Charlotte? If she wants you to, Ethan said. Charlotte bowed her head, and Lily carefully placed the crown on top of her dark hair. It was crooked and already wilting, but Charlotte wore it like it was made of diamonds. How do I look? She asked seriously. Like a queen, Lily declared. The best compliment I've ever received, Charlotte said, and Ethan could tell she meant it. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they packed up the picnic and headed inside. Charlotte insisted on sending them home with leftover food and a box of cookies for Lily's lunch. At the door, Lily surprised everyone by hugging Charlotte tightly. Thank you for today, she said. Can we come back? Charlotte's eyes glistened. Anytime you want. Driving home, Lily chattered about everything she'd seen and done. Ethan listened with half an ear, his mind on Charlotte and the strange, unexpected friendship that had formed between them. He thought about her wearing that dandelion crown, laughing as Lily placed it on her head. He thought about her earlier question about loving again and whether he'd ever be ready. And he realized that maybe ready wasn't something you decided. Maybe it was something that crept up on you slowly, moment by moment, until one day you looked around and discovered you'd already taken the first steps. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm neither Ethan nor Charlotte had planned, but both seemed to need. Wednesday evenings became standing dinner invitations, sometimes at Ethan's cramped kitchen table, sometimes at Charlotte's vast dining room that she was slowly learning to make feel less like a museum. Lily started calling Charlotte by her first name without the awkward pauses, and Charlotte stopped apologizing every time she admitted she didn't know how to do something normal, like make grilled cheese or play Go Fish. But the ease between them couldn't completely shield them from the outside world pressing in. It was a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after that first picnic, when everything started unraveling. Ethan was under a Chevy Impala at the shop, wrestling with a stubborn oil pan when his phone rang. He ignored it. Then it rang again, and again. Someone really wants to talk to you, Marcus, his coworker, called from across the garage. Ethan rolled out from under the car, wiping his hands on a rag that only spread the grease around. The caller ID showed Charlotte's name. He answered immediately. Ethan. Her voice was tight, controlled in a way that told him she was barely holding it together. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Did you talk to anyone about me? About that night at Rebecca's house? The question hit him like cold water. What? No, of course not. Why would I? There's an article. It went live 20 minutes ago. Vision Tech CEO's mental health crisis, inside Charlotte Vale's breakdown. They have details, Ethan. Specific details about me missing the technology leadership forum, about being found at my sister's house, about... Her voice cracked. They're calling me unstable, unfit to lead. The board is meeting right now to discuss my future. Ethan felt rage building in his chest. Charlotte, I swear to you, I didn't say anything to anyone. Not even Caleb knows the details of that night. There was a long pause. When Charlotte spoke again, her voice was quieter, but no less strained. I believe you. I'm sorry. I needed to hear you say it. Everyone else in my life has leaked something at some point. Stories to the press, information to competitors. I forget what it's like to trust someone. Who wrote the article? Jeremy Matheson. He's been trying to take me down for years. He has sources inside Vision Tech, people who want to see me gone. But he couldn't have gotten all of this without someone close. What are you going to do? I honestly don't know. My lawyers are screaming at me to issue denials, to threaten lawsuits. The board wants me to make a public statement. Rebecca thinks I should disappear for a while, let it blow over. Charlotte laughed bitterly. Everyone has an opinion about what I should do, but no one's asking what I actually want. What do you want? The question seemed to catch her off guard. I want to not be a headline. I want to have dinner with you and Lily without wondering if someone's taking pictures through the windows. I want to breathe without calculating how every action affects stock prices. Then do that, Ethan said. Tell them all to back off and take the space you need. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I have responsibilities, shareholders, employees who depend on the company staying strong. I can't just... You almost drove off a cliff 3 weeks ago, Charlotte. You were ready to end your life because the weight of all those responsibilities was crushing you. And now you're going to let those same people tell you how to handle your own mental health. Silence stretched between them. Ethan could hear voices in the background on her end, people calling her name, demanding her attention. I have to go, Charlotte said finally. The board meeting started 5 minutes ago. I just needed to hear a friendly voice before I walked in there. Call me after, no matter what time. Okay? A pause. Thank you, Ethan, for believing me. The line went dead. Ethan stood there in the middle of the garage, his phone still pressed to his ear, while Marcus watched with concern. Everything okay, man? Marcus asked. I don't know, Ethan said honestly. The rest of the day dragged by. Ethan couldn't focus, kept checking his phone even though he knew Charlotte would be in meetings for hours. When he picked up Lily from school, she immediately noticed his distraction. What's wrong, Daddy? Nothing, sweetheart. Just thinking about work. Is Charlotte okay? He glanced at her in the rearview mirror, surprised. Why do you ask? You always look worried when something's wrong with Charlotte, like how you used to look when Mommy was sick. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He'd thought he'd been better at hiding his emotions, but apparently 8-year-olds were more perceptive than he'd given them credit for. Charlotte's having a hard day, he said carefully. But she's going to be fine. Can we do something nice for her to make her feel better? Like what? Lily thought for a moment. We could make cookies, the chocolate chip ones she liked, and maybe draw her a picture? Ethan felt his chest warm. That's a great idea, baby girl. They stopped at the grocery store for ingredients and spent the evening baking cookies that were slightly burned on the edges but made with enough love to compensate. Lily drew an elaborate picture of the three of them having a picnic under Charlotte's oak tree, complete with the dandelion crown and an improbably large sun. Charlotte didn't call that night, or the next morning. By Wednesday afternoon, Ethan was seriously worried. He tried her number twice and got voicemail both times. He texted, "Just checking in. Hope you're okay." No response. He was considering driving to her house when his phone finally rang, but it wasn't Charlotte, it was Rebecca. Ethan, it's Rebecca Vale. We met at my house. I remember, is Charlotte okay? That's why I'm calling. She's not doing well. The board meeting didn't go well. They've asked her to take a leave of absence while they conduct a review of her fitness to serve as CEO. It's humiliating and calculated and designed to force her out. She came home and she's been locked in her bedroom for 18 hours. She won't talk to me, won't eat. I'm worried, Ethan. I'm on my way. Thank you. I'll leave the front door unlocked. Ethan called Mrs. Patterson next door, the elderly widow who sometimes watched Lily in emergencies. She agreed immediately, asking no questions when she saw the concern on Ethan's face. Go, she said, ushering Lily inside. We'll be fine. We'll make dinner and watch movies. Thank you. I'll be back as soon as I can. He grabbed the cookies and Lily's drawing and drove to Charlotte's house faster than was probably legal. Rebecca met him at the door, her face drawn with worry. I don't know what to do, she said. She won't respond when I knock. I can hear her moving around in there, so I know she's alive, but she won't talk to me. Show me. Rebecca led him upstairs to a closed door at the end of the hallway. Ethan knocked gently. Charlotte? It's Ethan. Can I come in? Silence. I brought cookies. Lily made them for you. They're a little burned, but she put a lot of love into them. More silence. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. The door's open. Ethan turned the handle and stepped inside. The room was dark, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. Charlotte sat on the floor by the window, knees pulled to her chest, still wearing what looked like the same clothes from yesterday. Her hair was tangled, her face bare of makeup, her eyes red and swollen. She looked broken. Ethan set the cookies and the drawing on the dresser and lowered himself to the floor beside her. He didn't try to touch her, didn't offer empty comfort. He just sat there, present and quiet. "They're going to take everything," Charlotte said finally. 15 years of my life, and they're going to erase me like I never existed. Not fit to lead. That's what the vote said. 6-3 in favor of my leave of absence. Can they do that without your consent? I gave my consent. What choice did I have? The alternative was a public fight that would tank the stock price and destroy everything I built. At least this way, there's a chance the company survives. She laughed hollowly. Funny how I still care about that. About protecting the thing that nearly killed me. It's not funny, it's human. You put your soul into that company. And what do I have to show for it? No family, no real friends except the ones I just made. A reputation in shambles, headlines calling me crazy. She turned to look at him, and the despair in her eyes was crushing. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am unfit. Maybe I've been fooling everyone all along, including myself. That's not true. How do you know? You barely know me, Ethan. You've seen me at my worst, but that doesn't mean you understand who I really am. But I know enough, Ethan said firmly. I know you're brilliant enough to build a billion-dollar company from nothing. I know you're honest enough to admit when you're struggling instead of pretending everything's fine. I know you're kind enough to spend your Saturday afternoon reading stories to my daughter and making her feel special. That's not someone who's unfit. That's someone who's human. Charlotte's face crumpled. She pressed her hands over her eyes as sobs racked her body, deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they'd been held back for years. Ethan moved closer, and she collapsed against him, crying into his shoulder the way she had that first night at Rebecca's house. But this was different. This wasn't the careful breakdown of someone who'd been holding it together for too long. This was grief and rage and fear all pouring out at once, unfiltered and raw. Ethan held her while she cried, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back, murmuring the same things he'd said to Lily after nightmares. I've got you. You're okay. I've got you. Eventually, the sobs quieted to shuddering breaths. Charlotte didn't pull away, just stayed there against his chest, exhausted. I don't know how to be anyone except the CEO, she whispered. I've been her for so long, I don't know what's left without that identity. Then maybe it's time to find out, Ethan said gently. Maybe losing the title is a chance to discover who Charlotte Vale actually is when she's not performing for boards and shareholders. That's terrifying. I know, but you don't have to do it alone. Charlotte finally pulled back, wiping her eyes with the heels of her hands. She looked around the dark room as if seeing it for the first time. I've been hiding, she said, just like I accused everyone else of wanting me to do. I thought if I stayed in here, I could avoid dealing with it, but it followed me anyway. It always does. She stood up, swaying slightly, and Ethan rose with her, ready to steady her if needed. Charlotte walked to the window and pulled open the curtains. Sunlight flooded the room, harsh and unforgiving. I need to shower, she said, and eat something, and read Lily's drawing, which I'm sure is beautiful. It really is. She drew you wearing the dandelion crown. A small, genuine smile crossed Charlotte's face. Of course she did. She turned back to Ethan. Thank you for coming. Rebecca called you, didn't she? She's worried about you. We both are. I'm sorry I didn't call you back. I couldn't face anyone. Couldn't face the pity or the advice or the I told you so's. I wasn't going to give you any of those things. I know. That's why I let you in. Charlotte walked to the dresser and picked up Lily's drawing. She studied it for a long moment, her fingers tracing the crayon lines. She's special, Charlotte said. You're raising someone remarkable. I'm trying. Most days I feel like I'm failing. You're not. Trust me, I know what failure looks like, and you're nowhere near it. They went downstairs together, where Rebecca practically fell on Charlotte with relief. While Charlotte showered and changed, Ethan and Rebecca sat in the kitchen drinking coffee neither of them wanted. I don't know how to help her, Rebecca said. I'm her sister, I should know, but she's always been so closed off. Even as kids, she never let anyone see her struggle. She just worked harder, pushed herself more, until whatever was wrong got buried under achievement. She's learning, Ethan said. Learning that it's okay to fall apart sometimes, that it doesn't make you weak. How did you get through to her? I've been trying for months. I didn't do anything special. I just showed up and didn't expect anything from her. Sometimes that's all people need, someone who's there without an agenda. Rebecca studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You care about her. It wasn't a question, but Ethan answered anyway. Yeah, I do. More than as a friend? The question caught him off guard. He opened his mouth to deny it, to say that of course they were just friends, that he was still in love with Sarah's memory, that the idea of anything more was ridiculous. But the words wouldn't come. Because somewhere between that rainy night and now, something had shifted. He looked forward to Charlotte's texts. He found himself thinking about her at odd moments, wondering if she'd eaten lunch, if she'd remembered to call her therapist, if she was having a good day or a bad one. And when Lily talked about her, when she drew pictures including Charlotte and their little family, Ethan hadn't felt the guilt he expected. Instead, he'd felt something like hope. I don't know, he said finally. I haven't let myself think about it that way. Maybe you should, Rebecca said gently. She needs someone who sees her as more than what she can provide or accomplish. Someone who cares about Charlotte the person, not Charlotte the CEO. I think you might be that person. I'm just a mechanic with a kid and a mountain of baggage. And she's just a woman who's terrified of being vulnerable. Sounds like you'd understand each other pretty well. Before Ethan could respond, Charlotte appeared in the doorway. She'd showered and changed into fresh clothes, her wet hair pulled back in a braid. She looked tired, but more like herself. I'm starving, she announced. What do we have? Rebecca jumped up. I'll make you something. Eggs, toast, both, and coffee. Lots of coffee. Charlotte sat down at the table across from Ethan. So, I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous, Ethan said, trying to lighten the mood. Charlotte smiled slightly. Probably, but here's what I've decided. I'm not going to fight the leave of absence. I'm going to take it and actually use the time to figure out what I want. Not what the board wants, not what shareholders want, what I want. That's good. And I'm going to stop hiding. Stop being ashamed that I struggled. If people want to call me unstable or unfit, let them. I know the truth. I know I'm dealing with my problems instead of ignoring them until they destroy me. Even better. And Charlotte paused, her confidence wavering slightly. And I'm going to ask for help when I need it, starting now. I need help, Ethan. I need someone to keep me accountable, to call me out when I'm falling back into old patterns. I need a friend who won't let me disappear into that bedroom again. You've got one, Ethan said without hesitation. Rebecca set a plate of eggs and toast in front of Charlotte, then quietly excused herself to give them privacy. Charlotte ate slowly, and Ethan could see her gathering strength with each bite. The press is going to be brutal, she said between mouthfuls. They're camped outside my office building, probably outside this house too by now. They're going to want statements and interviews and explanations, so don't give them any. You don't owe them anything. The publicist disagrees. She's been calling nonstop. Fire her. Charlotte blinked. What? Fire her. Fire anyone who's pressuring you to perform right now. You're on leave. That means you get to actually take a leave. I can't just... Why not? What are they going to do? Force you to work? You're Charlotte Vale. You own the company. If you want to tell your publicist to handle things without you for a while, you can do that. Charlotte set down her fork, considering. A slow smile spread across her face. You're right. I can do that. She pulled out her phone and started typing. I'm sending an email to my entire team, telling them I'm unreachable for the next month except for genuine emergencies. They can handle the day-to-day without me micromanaging. How does that feel? Terrifying. Liberating. Both. She hit send and set the phone face down on the table. They're done. Now what do I do with a month of free time? Whatever you want. Read, garden. Spend time with people you care about. Figure out who you are when you're not CEO Charlotte Vale. That's a very short list of people I care about, Charlotte said quietly. You and Lily, Rebecca and her family, my therapist. That's it. Then start there. Build from there. Charlotte finished her eggs and pushed the plate away. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. When you think about the future, your future, what do you see? Ethan thought about it. A month ago, the answer would have been simple. Survival. Getting through each day, raising Lily, maybe eventually paying off the house. Now, though, the picture was different. Blurrier, but also more colorful. I see Lily growing up, he said slowly. Getting taller, smarter, becoming her own person. I see myself maybe being less afraid all the time, less focused on just surviving and more focused on actually living. I see, he hesitated, I see room for new things, new people, new possibilities. Charlotte's eyes were bright. That's a good future. What about you? What do you see? Honestly, for the first time in my life, I have no idea. And that's actually exciting instead of terrifying. Maybe I go back to vision tech eventually. Maybe I start something completely new. Maybe I finally learn how to play piano like I always wanted to as a kid. I don't know, but I want to find out. They talked for another hour, making plans for Charlotte's month off. Small things, teaching her to cook basic meals, hiking some of the trails around Riverside, maybe driving to the coast but for the right reasons this time. Things that had nothing to do with quarterly earnings or board meetings. When Ethan finally left, the sun was setting, painting Charlotte's house in shades of gold and amber. She walked him to the door looking more centered than she had in days. "Same time Wednesday?" she asked. "For dinner?" "Lily would be heartbroken if we canceled." "Good, so would I." Charlotte reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Ethan, for not giving up on me. Thank you for not giving up on yourself." Driving home, Ethan thought about Rebecca's question. Did he care about Charlotte as more than a friend? The honest answer was that he didn't know. What he felt for her was different from what he'd felt for Sarah. Less like falling and more like growing, slow and steady and rooted in understanding rather than passion. But maybe that was okay. Maybe different didn't mean wrong. Mrs. Patterson met him at the door when he arrived, Lily already asleep on her couch. She had 2 helpings of spaghetti and fell asleep during the second movie, Mrs. Patterson reported. "Everything okay with your friend?" "Getting there," Ethan said. He carried Lily home in his arms, her head resting on his shoulder, and tucked her into bed without waking her. Then he sat in the quiet house and thought about futures and possibilities and the strange ways life could surprise you when you least expected it. His phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. "Thank you again. For everything. Sleep well." Ethan smiled and typed back, "You too. See you Wednesday." And for the first time in a long time, he actually believed that the days ahead might hold something more than just survival. They might hold actual joy. The month that followed became a study in contradictions. Charlotte's face remained on magazine covers and business blogs, dissected and analyzed by people who'd never met her, while the real Charlotte learned to make pancakes in Ethan's kitchen and helped Lily with third-grade math homework. The contrast wasn't lost on either of them. It was a Thursday afternoon, nearly 3 weeks into Charlotte's leave, when things shifted in a way neither of them had anticipated. Ethan was at the shop working on a transmission rebuild when Charlotte's name flashed on his phone. He almost didn't answer. His hands were covered in grease and Marcus was waiting for him to finish, but something made him wipe his hands and pick up. "Hey," he said. "Everything okay?" "Define okay." Charlotte's voice was tight. "Can you meet me somewhere? Not my house? Not yours. Somewhere neutral." Ethan glanced at the clock. 2:30. Lily wouldn't be out of school for another hour. The park on Riverside? The one with the duck pond? 20 minutes. She hung up before he could ask what was wrong. Ethan told Marcus he needed to take an early break and drove to the park with his mind racing through possibilities. Had the board changed their minds? Had something happened with her family? Had she decided she couldn't handle this anymore? Charlotte was already there when he arrived, sitting on a bench overlooking the pond. She wore sunglasses despite the overcast sky, and her shoulders were rigid with tension. A newspaper lay beside her on the bench. Ethan sat down, and Charlotte immediately handed him the paper without a word. It was folded to an opinion piece titled "The Real Cost of Female Ambition, Charlotte Vale and the Price of Having It All." He skimmed the article, his anger building with each paragraph. The writer, some columnist Ethan had never heard of, painted Charlotte as a cautionary tale. A woman who'd sacrificed her humanity for success, who'd pushed too hard and broken herself in the process. The piece was dressed up as sympathy, but underneath it was something uglier, satisfaction, proof that women couldn't handle the pressure at the top. "That's garbage," Ethan said, throwing the paper down. "Complete garbage." "Is it though?" Charlotte's voice was hollow. "Because that's exactly what I did. I sacrificed everything for vision tech, relationships, health, any semblance of normal life. She's not wrong." "She's completely wrong. You didn't break because you're a woman or because you were too ambitious. You broke because you're human, and humans have limits. This article is trying to make your struggle into some kind of gender commentary, and that's bullshit. Charlotte pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry but haunted. There are 12 more articles like this. I stopped reading after the 5th one. They're all saying the same thing in different ways. I failed. I proved that women can't handle the top jobs, that we're too emotional, too fragile, too whatever. Who cares what they say? Every woman who's fighting to be taken seriously in tech cares. Every girl who looked up to me as an example cares. I didn't just fail myself, Ethan. I failed all of them. Ethan turned to face her fully. Listen to me. You didn't fail anyone. You had the courage to admit when something wasn't working and to get help. That's not failure. That's strength. And any woman who's paying attention will see that. You don't understand what it's like. The pressure to be perfect. To never show weakness because the moment you do, people use it as proof that you didn't belong there in the first place. You're right, Ethan said. I don't understand that specific pressure, but I understand feeling like everyone's watching you, waiting for you to screw up. After Sarah died, every parenting decision I made felt scrutinized. People whispered about whether I could handle raising a daughter alone, whether Lily would be better off with Sarah's parents. I felt that weight every single day. Charlotte was quiet, watching the ducks paddle across the pond. What did you do? I stopped caring what they thought. I focused on being the best father I could be for Lily, and eventually people either accepted it or they didn't. Their opinions stopped mattering. He paused. The difference is, your decisions affect more than just you. I get that. But you can't let fear of judgment trap you into pretending you're something you're not. I don't even know what I am anymore, Charlotte said softly. For so long, I was just the CEO, the founder, the success story. Now I'm the breakdown story, the cautionary tale. I don't know how to be anything else. Then stop being a story at all. Just be Charlotte. Figure out what that means. A small, sad smile crossed her face. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's necessary. They sat in silence for a while, watching a mother with 2 young children feed bread to the ducks despite the sign asking people not to. The kids shrieked with delight when the ducks waddled close, and their mother laughed at their excitement. I'm jealous of her, Charlotte said suddenly. The mom? Yeah, she looks so content, like those kids and those ducks are the whole world, and it's enough. When did I lose that ability to just be present and happy with simple things? I don't think you lost it. I think you buried it, and now you're digging it back up. Ethan gestured toward the pond. You spent an entire Saturday 2 weeks ago building a blanket fort with Lily. You laughed so hard you cried when we played that card game, and she kept making up rules. That's being present. That's being happy with simple things. That's with you two. That's different. Why is it different? Charlotte looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. Because with you, I don't have to perform. I can just exist. Do you know how rare that is? How terrifying and wonderful it is to be around someone who doesn't want anything from me except honesty? Ethan felt his pulse quicken. They were treading into territory they'd carefully avoided for weeks, dancing around the edges of something neither of them had been ready to name. Charlotte, I'm falling for you. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back and couldn't anymore. I know the timing is terrible. I know I'm a mess, and you're still grieving Sarah, and we have completely different lives. But I needed to say it because I'm trying to be honest about what I feel, and I feel something for you that I've never felt before. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. Part of him wanted to say it back immediately, to tell her he felt it too, that somewhere between coffee at Joe's Diner and Wednesday night dinners, she'd become essential to his life in a way he hadn't expected. But another part, the part that still saw Sarah's face in dreams, that still wore his wedding ring, that still felt guilty for every moment of happiness that didn't include her, that part held him back. I don't know what to say, he admitted. Charlotte's face fell, but she nodded. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. And now you do, and we can pretend I never said it if that's easier. I don't want to pretend. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, frustrated with his inability to articulate what he was feeling. Sarah's only been gone 2 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and Lily's still processing losing her mother, and I don't know if it's fair to her to bring someone new into our lives in that way. I understand. But, Ethan continued, I also know that I think about you constantly, that Wednesday nights are the highlight of my week, that when something good or bad happens, you're the first person I want to tell. And that scares me because I didn't think I'd ever feel that way about anyone again. Charlotte's eyes were bright with tears. So what do we do? I don't know. Can we just keep doing what we're doing? Figure it out as we go? That's not fair to you. You shouldn't have to carry my feelings on top of everything else you're dealing with. You're not a burden, Charlotte. Ethan searched for the right word. You're important. To me and to Lily. Whatever this is between us, we'll figure it out when we're both ready. And if we're never ready, then we stay friends, and that would still mean something. Charlotte wiped her eyes. You're too good, you know that? Most people would have run screaming by now. I'm not most people, and neither are you. They sat together as the afternoon faded, not touching but connected by the honest words hanging between them. When Ethan finally checked his phone, he realized he was late to pick up Lily. I have to go, he said reluctantly. I know. Charlotte stood with him. Ethan, thank you for not making this weird. Give it time. I'm sure I'll make it weird eventually. She laughed, and the sound eased some of the tension. They walked to their cars together, and just before Ethan opened his door, Charlotte reached out and squeezed his hand. Whatever happens, she said, I'm grateful you walked into my life that night. Me too. Ethan drove to the school with his mind spinning. Charlotte's confession had shifted something fundamental between them, brought into the open what they'd both been feeling but not acknowledging. And now he had to figure out what to do with it. Lily was waiting by the flagpole with her teacher when he arrived, 10 minutes late. She climbed into the truck with a concerned look. You're never late, she said. Is something wrong? No, sweetheart. I was just talking to Charlotte and lost track of time. Is she okay? She seemed sad on Wednesday. Ethan glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. She's dealing with some grown-up stuff, but she's going to be fine. Do you like her? Lily asked suddenly. Of course I like her. She's our friend. No, I mean, do you like her like how Mommy said you liked her before you got married? Ethan nearly drove off the road. He pulled over into a parking lot and turned to face Lily directly. Why do you ask that? Lily shrugged, picking at her backpack strap. You smile different when you talk about her, like how you smiled in the pictures with Mommy. And Charlotte looks at you the same way. Lily, Ethan struggled to find age-appropriate words for complicated adult feelings. Charlotte and I are friends. Good friends. And maybe someday that could be something more, but right now we're just figuring things out. Would it be okay if you liked her more? Lily asked quietly. I mean, would Mommy be mad? The question broke Ethan's heart. Come here, baby. Lily unbuckled and climbed into the front seat, curling up against him. Ethan wrapped his arms around her. Mommy would want us to be happy, he said carefully. She loved us so much, and she would never want us to be sad forever. If we found someone who made us happy, someone who was kind and good and cared about us, Mommy would be okay with that. She'd want that for us. Do you think Charlotte could be that person? I don't know yet. Maybe. Would that be okay with you? Lily thought about it seriously. I like Charlotte. She's nice to me. And she makes you laugh, which you didn't do much before. So yeah, I think it would be okay. Ethan kissed the top of her head. Thank you for telling me that. But there's no rush, okay? We're all just spending time together and being friends, and we'll see what happens. Okay. Lily pulled back and looked at him with Sarah's eyes. But Daddy, it's okay to be happy. I want you to be happy. I want you to be happy too, sweetheart. I am happy, especially on Wednesdays. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat in the dark living room thinking about happiness and guilt and the impossible task of moving forward while honoring the past. His phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. I'm sorry if I made things awkward today. That wasn't my intention. He typed back, You didn't. You were honest. I'm grateful for that. Are we okay? We're okay. Wednesday still on? Absolutely. Lily requested mac and cheese. I'm going to attempt making it from scratch. Brave choice. YouTube is your friend. Already watching tutorials. This is going to be a disaster. Ethan smiled. Probably. But a delicious disaster. See you Wednesday. See you then. He set the phone down and looked at the framed photo of Sarah on the mantel. She was laughing in the picture, windblown and happy at the beach during their honeymoon. Beautiful and alive and gone. "I don't know what I'm doing," Ethan said to her picture, something he did sometimes when the house was quiet. "I didn't expect any of this. Didn't expect to feel anything for anyone else. But she's something. And I think you'd like her. I think you'd want me to give this a chance." The house remained silent, but Ethan felt something shift inside him. Not letting go of Sarah, he'd never fully let go, but making room. Making space for the possibility that his heart was bigger than he'd thought, capable of holding both grief for what he'd lost and hope for what might come. The next few days passed normally. Work, dinner, helping Lily with homework, the usual rhythm, but everything felt slightly different now, charged with potential. When Wednesday came, Ethan found himself more nervous than he'd been in years. Charlotte arrived at 6 with a grocery bag full of ingredients and a determined expression. "I'm making dinner," she announced. "You're going to sit and relax." "You sure about that?" "Absolutely not, but I'm doing it anyway." Lily immediately volunteered as sous chef, and Ethan watched from the kitchen table as they worked together. Charlotte was methodical, following the recipe exactly, while Lily added her own creative interpretations. "It says 1 cup of cheese," Charlotte read. "But more cheese is better," Lily argued. "Everyone knows that." "The recipe doesn't say that." "The recipe doesn't know everything." Charlotte looked to Ethan for support. He just shrugged. "Kid's got a point." "Fine, extra cheese it is." They added so much cheese that the final result was less mac and cheese and more cheese with some pasta mixed in. It was also delicious. They ate at the table with Lily telling elaborate stories about her day at school, each one more dramatic than the last. And then Jessica said her cat could talk, but I don't believe her because cats can't talk, right, Daddy? "Not in any language we understand," Ethan confirmed. "That's what I said." But she got mad and said I wasn't using my imagination. "Imagination is important," Charlotte said, "but so is knowing what's real and what's pretend." "Like how Vision Tech isn't really a tech company, it's actually a secret superhero headquarters," Lily asked innocently. Charlotte nearly choked on her water. "Where did you hear that?" "I made it up, using my imagination." "Well, I hate to disappoint you, but it's just a regular tech company, no superheroes." "That's exactly what a superhero would say," Lily said knowingly. After dinner, they played board games until Lily started yawning. Charlotte offered to do the bedtime story, and Ethan found himself listening from the hallway as she read with different voices for each character, making Lily giggle. When Charlotte came back downstairs, Ethan had opened a bottle of wine, cheap stuff from the grocery store, but Charlotte didn't seem to mind. They sat on the couch with space between them, the air thick with everything that had been said and unsaid. "She's wonderful," Charlotte said. "You're doing an incredible job with her." "We have our moments. Last week she decided she hated all vegetables and would only eat foods that were white or yellow." "How'd you handle that?" "Told her fine, but that meant no strawberries, no grapes, no chocolate. She reconsidered her position pretty quickly." Charlotte laughed. "Brilliant." They fell into comfortable silence, sipping wine and listening to the house settle around them. Finally, Charlotte said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about figuring things out as we go." "Yeah?" "I want that. I want to see where this goes without pressure or expectations, but I also need you to know that I'm patient. Whatever timeline you need, I can wait." "That's not fair to you." "Let me decide what's fair to me." Charlotte turned to face him. "For the first time in my adult life, I'm not in a hurry. I'm not trying to rush to the next achievement or milestone. I'm just here, in this moment, with someone I care about. That's enough." Ethan felt something in his chest loosen. "Okay, then we take it slow. No pressure. Just this." "Just this," Charlotte agreed. She left around 9, and Ethan walked her to the door. They stood there for a moment, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that he'd come to associate with her presence. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Charlotte." She leaned in, and for a heart-stopping moment, Ethan thought she was going to kiss him. Instead, she pressed her lips to his cheek, brief and soft, before pulling back with a small smile. "See you soon," she said, and walked to her car. Ethan stood on the porch watching her drive away, his hand touching the spot where she'd kissed him. It was such a small gesture, chaste and almost innocent, but it felt monumental. Inside, he checked on Lily one more time. She was sound asleep, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed for a moment, watching her breathe. "We're going to be okay," he whispered. "All of us. Think we're going to be okay." The next morning, Ethan woke to find an email from Charlotte sent at 3 in the morning. The subject line read, "I couldn't sleep, so I wrote this." The email was long, several pages of thoughts she'd apparently needed to get out. She wrote about her fears, of not being enough without her CEO title, of falling too hard too fast, of somehow ruining the best friendship she'd ever had. She wrote about her hopes, that maybe she could build a life that included both professional success and personal connection, that maybe it wasn't too late to want both. But the part that stayed with Ethan was the end. "I know you're still figuring things out, and I respect that completely. But I wanted you to know that when I imagine my future now, something I couldn't do at all a month ago, you're in it. You and Lily both. Not in any specific role or capacity, just there. Present. Part of my life in whatever way makes sense. And that matters. You matter. More than I know how to express in a way that doesn't sound desperate or overwhelming. So I'll just say this. Thank you for giving me a reason to imagine a future at all. Whatever happens next, that gift is something I'll always be grateful for." Ethan read it 3 times, his coffee going cold beside him. Then he picked up his phone and called her. She answered on the first ring. "I'm sorry, that email was too much, wasn't it? I should have just kept it in my drafts." "It wasn't too much," Ethan interrupted. "It was honest, and I'm glad you sent it." "You are?" "Yeah, because I've been thinking too, about futures and possibilities and what I'm ready for. And I'm not ready for everything yet, but I'm ready for more than we have, if you are." There was a pause. Then, quietly, "What does more look like?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe we go on an actual date. Just the 2 of us. Not a family dinner. Maybe we stop pretending this is purely friendship when it's clearly becoming something else. Maybe we acknowledge that we're both scared, but we want to try anyway." "I would like all of those things," Charlotte said, and Ethan could hear the smile in her voice. "Okay then, Saturday night. I'll get Mrs. Patterson to watch Lily. We'll go somewhere nice, or somewhere cheap but good, because I'm still a mechanic and you're on leave. And we'll see what happens." "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "I'm terrified." "Me too. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the good things are supposed to be a little scary." "Maybe," Charlotte agreed. After they hung up, Ethan sat with the phone in his hand, his heart racing. He'd just agreed to a date. His first real date since Sarah. The thought should have filled him with guilt, but instead he felt something lighter. Like maybe, finally, he was allowing himself permission to want something good. He looked at Sarah's picture again. "I'm going to try," he told her. "I'm going to try to be happy again. I hope that's okay." And in the quiet morning light, with the whole uncertain future stretching ahead, Ethan felt like maybe it was. Saturday arrived with the kind of nervous energy that made Ethan check his reflection in the mirror 4 times before he was satisfied. He'd bought a new shirt, nothing fancy, just a dark blue button-down that fit better than his usual work clothes, and spent 20 minutes trying to tame his hair into something presentable. Lily watched from his bedroom doorway with barely contained amusement. "You look nice, Daddy," she said. "But you're acting weird." "I'm not acting weird. You changed your shirt 3 times, and you used the good cologne, the one you only wore for Mommy's birthday dinners." Ethan froze, the cologne bottle still in his hand. He'd reached for it without thinking, muscle memory from years of special occasions. For a moment, guilt threatened to swallow him whole. "Is that okay?" he asked quietly. "That I'm using it for this?" Lily came into the room and hugged him around the waist. "Mommy would want you to use it. She'd want you to be happy and go on dates and smell nice." "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just don't always listen." Ethan laughed and kissed the top of her head. "Fair point. Now Mrs. Patterson is coming over at 6. You promised to be good for her." "I'm always good." "You're always something, that's for sure." Mrs. Patterson arrived promptly at 6, carrying a bag of knitting and a knowing smile. She shooed Ethan toward the door before he could go through his usual litany of instructions. We'll be fine, she said firmly. You go have a nice time with your lady friend. She's not. We're just. Mm-hmm. Go on now. Don't keep her waiting. Ethan drove to Charlotte's house with his hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. They'd agreed he'd pick her up. A proper date, she'd insisted, meant proper date traditions. And now he was pulling up to the Morrison estate, feeling completely out of his depth. Charlotte answered the door before he could knock, and Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She wore a simple black dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and understated, her hair loose around her shoulders for once. She'd done her makeup, but it was softer than her usual corporate armor, just enough to highlight her features without hiding them. "Hi," she said, and even that single word sounded nervous. "Hi. You look beautiful." Charlotte's smile was radiant. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." "This old thing?" Ethan gestured to his new shirt, the tag still sticking out of the collar. Ethan felt heat rush to his face as Charlotte stepped closer and gently tucked the tag back inside his shirt. Her fingers brushed the nape of his neck, and he felt that small touch everywhere. "There," she said softly. "Perfect." The restaurant Ethan had chosen was a small Italian place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but the food was good and it had private booths in the back. He'd called ahead to request one, feeling simultaneously presumptuous and hopeful. The hostess led them to a corner booth with a flickering candle and checkered tablecloth. Charlotte slid in across from him, and for a moment they just looked at each other, the weight of what they were doing settling over them. "This is strange," Charlotte said finally. "Good strange or bad strange?" "Good strange. Nerve-wracking strange. I haven't been on a first date in almost 15 years. I'm completely out of practice. Join the club. My last first date was with Sarah when we were 17. I don't even remember how dating works." "Well, I think we're supposed to make small talk. Ask each other questions we don't already know the answers to." "That's going to be hard. We've spent the last month telling each other everything." Charlotte grinned. "Okay, new rule. No talking about vision tech, no talking about work stuff. We have to find completely new topics." "Deal. You start." Charlotte thought for a moment, her fingers playing with the stem of her water glass. "If you could go anywhere in the world right now, money and responsibilities no object, where would you go?" Ethan considered the question seriously. "Honestly, I've never thought about it much. Sarah and I always talked about going to Italy someday, but we never made it happen. Life kept getting in the way. What about you?" "Japan," Charlotte said without hesitation. "I've been 3 times for business, but always in and out of Tokyo for meetings. I'd love to actually explore. See the temples, the gardens, the small towns. Experience it as a person, not a CEO. Maybe you will. You've got time now." "Maybe we both will," Charlotte said, and the way she said "we" made Ethan's heart skip. The waiter arrived to take their order, and they fumbled through choosing wine and entrees with the awkwardness of people trying too hard to appear casual. After he left, Charlotte started laughing. "What?" Ethan asked. "This. Us. We've had dinner together dozens of times, completely relaxed, and now we're sitting here acting like teenagers at prom. To be fair, I never went to prom." "You didn't?" "Sarah got sick senior year, just a bad flu, but we were worried, and I stayed home to take care of her. We watched movies and ate pizza instead. She wore her prom dress anyway, just for the hell of it." Charlotte's expression softened. "That's incredibly sweet." "She was incredibly sweet and stubborn and brave." Ethan paused, his fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. "I loved her so much it scared me sometimes. When she died, I thought that was it, that I'd used up my capacity to feel that way about another person. And now?" Ethan met Charlotte's eyes across the candlelight. "Now I'm starting to think maybe the heart doesn't work like that. Maybe it doesn't run out. Maybe it just grows." Charlotte reached across the table, her hand hovering near his. Ethan closed the distance, lacing his fingers through hers. The touch was electric and comfortable at the same time, like something both brand new and already familiar. "I'm terrified of messing this up," Charlotte admitted, "of being too much or not enough or somehow ruining the best thing that's happened to me in years." "You're not going to mess it up. You don't know that. I have a spectacular track record of destroying relationships through neglect or workaholism or just general emotional unavailability. But you're not doing any of those things now. You're here, you're present, you're trying. What if trying isn't enough? Then we figure it out together. That's what people do, right? They work through the hard stuff. Charlotte squeezed his hand. I'm not used to people sticking around when things get hard. Get used to it. I'm not going anywhere. The food arrived, and they fell into easier conversation, the initial nervousness fading into something more natural. Charlotte told stories about her early days building vision tech, the failed pitches, the investors who'd laughed her out of rooms, the first client who'd taken a chance on her. Ethan shared memories of working at the auto shop, the strange things people did to their cars, the satisfaction of fixing something that seemed broken beyond repair. I think that's why I'm good at it, Ethan said, twirling pasta around his fork. I like the puzzle of it, taking something that doesn't work and figuring out how to make it run again. Is that what you're doing with me? Charlotte asked, her tone light but her eyes serious. Fixing something broken? No. You're not broken, Charlotte. You were overwhelmed and exhausted and pushed past your limits. That's not the same as broken. It felt broken. I know, but feeling broken and being broken are different things. You prove that by getting help, by taking time, by letting people in. Broken things can't do that. Hurt things can. Charlotte's eyes grew bright. How do you always know exactly what to say? I don't. Half the time I'm making it up as I go along. Well, you're good at it. They shared dessert, tiramisu that Charlotte insisted was almost as good as the real thing she'd had in Milan, and talked until they were the last customers in the restaurant. The staff started stacking chairs around them, polite but pointed. I think that's our cue, Ethan said, flagging down the check. Outside, the night had turned cool and clear, stars visible despite the streetlights. Charlotte shivered slightly, and Ethan offered her his jacket without thinking. She pulled it around her shoulders, swimming in it, looking younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. I don't want tonight to end, she said as they walked to the car. It doesn't have to. Not yet. Instead of driving straight back to her house, Ethan took the long way, winding through the hills above Riverside. He pulled over at a lookout point where you could see the whole town spread out below, a constellation of lights in the darkness. They got out and leaned against the hood of the truck, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. The silence was comfortable, filled with the sound of crickets and the distant hum of traffic. Thank you, Charlotte said eventually. For tonight, for taking a chance on this. Thank you for being patient with me, for understanding that I needed time. Are you glad you didn't wait longer? Ethan turned to face her fully. Yeah, I am. Charlotte looked up at him, and in the starlight her expression was open and hopeful and terrified all at once. Ethan recognized that look because he felt it too. The fear of wanting something so badly that losing it would hurt worse than never having it at all. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought you'd never ask. Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Charlotte leaned in instead, closing the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape of something new. Then Charlotte's hands found his waist, pulling him closer, and Ethan deepened the kiss, pouring everything he'd been too afraid to say into that contact. It was different from kissing Sarah, not better or worse, just different. Its own thing, belonging only to this moment, this woman, this unexpected second chance at feeling alive. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Charlotte rested her forehead against his chest. Wow, she said. Yeah, wow. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other, watching the lights of Riverside flicker below. Eventually, Ethan drove Charlotte home, and they sat in her driveway not wanting to say goodbye. I had the best time, Charlotte said. Can we do this again? Absolutely, though next time you're planning it. Deal. Fair warning, my idea of a second date might involve teaching you to cook something more complicated than spaghetti. As long as it doesn't involve soufflés. I've heard those are impossible. Charlotte laughed and leaned over to kiss him once more, brief and sweet. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Charlotte. He waited until she was safely inside before driving home, his mind replaying every moment of the evening. When he got back, Mrs. Patterson was dozing in front of the television, her knitting forgotten in her lap. "How was she?" Ethan asked, gently waking her. "Perfect angel, as always. How was your night?" Ethan couldn't stop the smile spreading across his face. "Really good. Really good." Mrs. Patterson patted his arm knowingly. "I'm glad, dear. You deserve some happiness." After she left, Ethan checked on Lily and found her wide awake, reading by flashlight under her covers. "Busted," he said from the doorway. Lily quickly turned off the flashlight. "I was just reading one more chapter." Mm-hmm. "How many one more chapters have you read?" "Maybe 4. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed. "Okay, but now it's really bedtime. It's almost 11. Did you have fun with Charlotte?" "I did. We had a nice dinner and talked a lot." "Did you kiss her?" Ethan felt heat rise to his face. "That's a very personal question." "So you did?" Lily's face lit up. "That's good. I think you should kiss people who make you happy." "Where did you learn that?" "From watching you and Mommy. You used to kiss her all the time, and you both looked happy." Ethan's throat tightened. "Yeah, we did." "It's okay to be happy with Charlotte too, Daddy. Mommy would want that. She told me once that love doesn't run out. There's always more if you're brave enough to let it in." Ethan stared at his daughter, stunned. "She said that to you?" "Right before she went to the hospital the last time, she said no matter what happened, I should always let people love me and always love people back. Because that's what makes life good." Tears burned Ethan's eyes. He pulled Lily into a tight hug, overwhelmed by his wife's wisdom reaching across death to give him permission he hadn't realized he needed. "She was right," he whispered. "She was so right." The next few weeks unfolded like a story neither of them had dared to imagine. Charlotte and Ethan fell into a rhythm that included but expanded beyond their Wednesday dinners. They went on more dates, to movies, to the farmer's market, on long drives through the countryside. Charlotte started spending more time at Ethan's house, helping with homework and cooking disasters that somehow always ended in laughter. And slowly, the outside world began to shift too. Charlotte's leave of absence ended, but instead of returning to Vision Tech as CEO, she negotiated a new role. She'd remain on the board and stay involved in strategic decisions, but the day-to-day operations would go to someone else, someone who wanted that pressure and responsibility. "I built something incredible," she told Ethan one evening as they sat on his porch watching the sunset. "But that doesn't mean I have to be consumed by it. I can let it grow without me controlling every aspect." "How does it feel?" "Terrifying and liberating in equal measure, but mostly right. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm making choices based on what I want, not what I think I should want." "And what do you want?" Charlotte turned to him with a smile. "This, you, Lily. A life that includes work but isn't defined by it. Time to breathe. Time to be human." 2 months after their first date, Charlotte showed up at Ethan's house on a Tuesday afternoon with an unusual request. "I want to visit Sarah's grave," she said, "with you, if that's okay." Ethan was surprised but touched. "Why?" "Because she's part of your story, part of who you are and who Lily is. And if we're really doing this, building something together, I want to acknowledge that, to pay my respects to the woman who loved you first." They drove to the cemetery on a clear autumn day, leaves crunching under their feet as they walked to Sarah's headstone. Ethan knelt down and brushed away some fallen leaves, his fingers tracing her name. "Hi, Sarah," he said softly. "I brought someone to meet you. This is Charlotte. She's become really important to us. To me and Lily, both." He paused, emotion thick in his throat. "I hope that's okay. I hope you understand. I'll always love you. But I'm learning that doesn't mean I can't love someone else too." Charlotte knelt beside him, placing a small bouquet of flowers near the headstone. "Thank you," she whispered, "for loving him so well that he knew how to love again, for raising Lily to be kind and open and brave, for giving him permission to be happy. I promise I'll take care of them, both of them." They sat there for a while, the silence peaceful rather than heavy. When they finally left, Ethan felt lighter, like he'd been carrying a weight he hadn't fully acknowledged, and Charlotte had helped him set it down. That evening, Charlotte joined them for dinner as usual. But this time, as they sat around the table, something felt different, more permanent, more like family. "I have an announcement," Lily said suddenly, setting down her fork with exaggerated importance. Oh? Ethan raised an eyebrow. What's that? I've decided that Charlotte should have a drawer here, for her stuff, like a toothbrush and maybe some pajamas, so she doesn't always have to go home at night. Charlotte's eyes widened. Lily, that's very sweet, but I already cleared out the second drawer in the bathroom, Lily continued, undeterred. And I made space in the hall closet for a coat, because it's getting cold and Charlotte's coat is at her house, and that's not efficient. Ethan looked at Charlotte, who was clearly trying not to laugh. Well, he said slowly, if Lily's already made space, it would be rude not to use it. Are you sure? Charlotte asked, her voice catching slightly. That's a big step. It's a drawer, Ethan said, and maybe some closet space. We can start small. Charlotte's smile was radiant. Okay, small steps. I like small steps. Over the following months, those small steps added up. Charlotte's drawer became 2 drawers, then half a closet. She started keeping coffee at Ethan's house. The good kind, not the instant stuff. Her laptop found a permanent spot on the kitchen table. Lily started casually mentioning when Charlotte moves in, as if it were inevitable rather than hypothetical. And slowly, Riverside began to see them as a unit. Charlotte shopping at the farmer's market with Lily. Ethan and Charlotte at Joe's diner on Sunday mornings. The 3 of them at Lily's school play, Charlotte cheering as loudly as any parent when Lily delivered her 2 lines as townsperson number 3. The town gossip mill churned, of course. A billionaire CEO dating. A local mechanic made for juicy speculation. But the whispers were more curious than cruel, and eventually people got used to seeing them together. Charlotte became just another resident of Riverside, the woman who volunteered at Lily's school library and could sometimes be seen attempting to garden in her impossible backyard. Vision Tech continued to thrive without Charlotte at the helm, which she admitted was both validating and slightly humbling. Turns out I'm not as indispensable as I thought, she told Ethan one evening. The company's doing better than ever. How does that feel? Good, actually. I built something strong enough to stand on its own. That's more meaningful than being irreplaceable. She started consulting for other women in tech, using her experience to help them avoid the burnout that had nearly destroyed her. She gave talks about mental health and leadership, opening up about her struggles in a way that made her more relatable than her success ever had. I got an email today, she told Ethan one morning over coffee, from a young woman who heard me speak last month. She said my honesty about hitting bottom gave her permission to ask for help before she reached that point, that I might have saved her life. Tears streamed down Charlotte's face, but she was smiling. That matters more than any quarterly earnings report ever did. 6 months after their first date, on a rainy evening that reminded Ethan of the night they'd met, he found himself standing in his living room with a small velvet box in his pocket and his heart in his throat. Charlotte and Lily were in the kitchen making dinner. Well, Charlotte was making dinner while Lily provided running commentary on everything she was doing wrong. Their laughter drifted through the house, familiar and warm. Ethan had talked to Lily about this 2 weeks ago, sitting on her bed after story time. How would you feel if I asked Charlotte to marry us? He'd said. Not just me, all of us. If she became part of our family officially. Lily had been quiet for a long moment, her expression serious. Would she be my mom? She'd be Charlotte. She could never replace your mom, and she wouldn't try to. But she could be someone else who loves you and takes care of you, if you wanted that. And she'd live here all the time, not just some nights? Yeah, all the time. Lily had thought about it, then nodded decisively. Okay, yes, I want Charlotte to be part of our family, but Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? Can I help you ask her? Like, can it be from both of us? So now they had a plan. After dinner, while Charlotte was washing dishes, Lily would distract her while Ethan set up candles in the living room. Then they'd both ask her together. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. Charlotte's chicken slightly overcooked, Lily's contribution of fancy vegetables, turning out to be baby carrots arranged in a smiley face. Ethan's bread rolls burned on the bottom, but nobody caring because they were together. As Charlotte stood at the sink running water over the dishes, Lily caught Ethan's eye and nodded. Time. Charlotte? Lily said, her voice carefully casual. Can you help me find my library book? I think it fell behind the couch. Sure, sweetie. Let me just finish these. It's due tomorrow. I really need it now. Charlotte dried her hands and followed Lily into the living room, where Ethan had somehow managed to light a dozen candles in under 2 minutes. Charlotte stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. "What's this?" she asked, her voice already shaking. Ethan and Lily stood together in the center of the room. Ethan pulled out the small velvet box, and Lily held a folded piece of paper she'd decorated with hearts and flowers. "Charlotte," Ethan began, his voice rough with emotion. "6 months ago, you walked past my house on the worst night of your life. And somehow, saving you ended up saving me too. You brought joy back into this house. You made us laugh again. You showed us that family isn't just about blood or history. It's about choosing to show up for each other, day after day." Lily unfolded her paper. "We want you to be part of our family forever," she read carefully. "We love you and we want you to stay. Will you marry us?" Charlotte's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She looked from Lily to Ethan and back again, unable to speak. Ethan opened the box, revealing a simple ring, not a massive diamond, because that wasn't Charlotte's style, but a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds that caught the candlelight. "Charlotte Vale," he said, "will you marry me?" Charlotte dropped to her knees, pulling both of them into a fierce hug. "Yes," she sobbed. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Lily whooped and threw her arms around Charlotte's neck. Ethan slipped the ring onto Charlotte's finger with shaking hands, and she held it up to the light, admiring the way it sparkled. "It's perfect," she whispered. "You're both perfect. I can't believe this is real." "Believe it," Ethan said, kissing her softly. "You're stuck with us now. Best thing I've ever been stuck with." They stayed there on the floor, surrounded by candles, the three of them tangled together, until Lily announced she was going to call Rebecca and tell her the news immediately. "Can I?" she asked, already reaching for the phone. "Go ahead," Charlotte laughed. While Lily chatted excitedly to Rebecca in the kitchen, Ethan and Charlotte sat together on the couch, her hand in his, the ring catching firelight. "I never thought I'd have this," Charlotte said quietly. "A family. People who chose me not for what I could give them, but for who I am. It feels like a dream. It's real. We're real." "I know. That's what makes it so incredible." She turned to face him fully. "I love you, Ethan Cole. I love you and Lily and this messy, imperfect, beautiful life we're building together. I love that you saw me at my worst and didn't run, that you believed I was worth saving when I'd given up on myself." "Whoop. You saved yourself," Ethan corrected gently. "I just held your hand while you did it." "Then I'm grateful you were there to hold my hand, and I'm grateful you're letting me hold yours now." They kissed as Lily's excited voice echoed from the kitchen, talking to what sounded like half of Riverside by now. When they finally pulled apart, Charlotte was smiling through her tears. "So," she said, "I guess I need to officially move in now?" "I guess you do." "Think you can handle living in a house this small? It's not exactly the Morrison estate." "Are you kidding? This house has something the estate never had." "What's that?" "Love, laughter, life, all the things I was missing." Charlotte looked around the small living room with its worn furniture and Lily's toys scattered across the floor. "This is exactly where I want to be." 3 months later, on a bright spring morning, they were married in a small ceremony in Charlotte's backyard, the one she'd let grow wild and beautiful. Rebecca stood as maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Caleb was Ethan's best man, grinning so wide his face hurt, and Lily served as flower girl, taking her job so seriously that she counted each petal she dropped to make sure the distribution was even. Charlotte wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers from her garden. Ethan wore his best suit, the one he'd bought for Sarah's funeral and had never worn since, because Charlotte had told him it was time to make new memories in it. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Lily stage whispered, "If anyone says anything, I'm going to be really mad," which made everyone laugh. And when Ethan and Charlotte exchanged vows, promising to be honest, to be present, to choose each other every single day, there wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering. "I promise to never let work consume me again," Charlotte said, her voice steady despite her tears. "To put this family first, to show up for you both in big ways and small, To be the partner you deserve and the person Lily can count on. I promise to keep taking chances, Ethan said. To keep opening my heart even when it's scary. To honor the past while building our future. To love you fiercely and honestly for all the days we have. When they kissed, Lily cheered loudly enough to startle the birds from the oak tree. The reception was held in the same backyard, with string lights hung between trees and a playlist of songs chosen by Lily, an eclectic mix that jumped from classical to pop to the theme song from her favorite cartoon. They danced on the grass, Charlotte in her bare feet, Ethan spinning Lily until she was dizzy with giggles. Rebecca pulled Charlotte aside during the reception, both of them watching Ethan teach Lily a complicated dance move that neither of them could quite master. "You look happy," Rebecca said. "Really, truly happy. I haven't seen you like this since we were kids." "I'm happy. Happier than I knew was possible. You know, that night I called Ethan when you were locked in your room, I wasn't sure it would help. I didn't know if anyone could reach you. He reached me. He and Lily both. They gave me a reason to keep going when I couldn't find one on my own." Rebecca squeezed her hand. "I'm so glad you found each other. And I'm so proud of you for doing the work to get here, for choosing to live instead of just survive." Charlotte hugged her sister tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for calling Ethan that night, for loving me even when I was too lost to love myself." As the sun set over Riverside, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Charlotte found herself standing under the oak tree where they'd had their first picnic. Ethan joined her, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About that rainy night, about how close I came to not being here for this, and about how grateful I am that I looked up and saw you in that window, and that you saw me too." "I almost didn't come after you," Ethan admitted. "I almost convinced myself it wasn't my business, that I should stay out of it." "What changed your mind?" "I recognized the look in your eyes, the one I'd seen in my own mirror too many times, and I couldn't ignore it." Charlotte turned in his arms to face him. "We saved each other, didn't we?" "Yeah, I think we did." Lily ran over, her flower crown askew, her cheeks flushed from dancing. "Come on! They're about to cut the cake and I helped choose it, and it's 3 layers." They followed her back to the party, hand in hand, while the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Around them, friends and neighbors celebrated, proof that the isolated, lonely people they'd both been had transformed into something richer, something connected. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and Lily was asleep in her room, their room now, in the house that would soon hold all 3 of them, Charlotte and Ethan stood on the back porch of the Morrison estate one last time. "I'm going to miss this house," Charlotte said, "even though I'm excited to move into yours, ours. We can keep it, use it for guests, or rent it out, or just let it sit here." "No, I'm selling it. Rebecca's interested, actually. She and the kids love the yard, and it would give them more space. It feels right, keeping it in the family but letting it be someone else's dream instead of my monument." "You sure?" "Completely. I don't need a mansion anymore. I just need you and Lily and a place that feels like home. Everything else is just stuff." They locked up the big house and drove to the small one together, Charlotte's hand resting on Ethan's knee the entire way. When they pulled into the driveway, Charlotte looked at the modest house with its peeling paint and crooked fence post, the one Ethan still hadn't fixed, and felt a wave of contentment so strong it nearly knocked her over. "Home," she said softly. "Home," Ethan agreed. They checked on Lily one more time. She'd fallen asleep still wearing her flower crown, her face peaceful in the glow of her nightlight. Charlotte adjusted her blanket and kissed her forehead, and Ethan watched from the doorway with a full heart. In their own room, Sarah's pictures moved to a special shelf where they could be honored without dominating. Ethan and Charlotte lay in bed talking about the future, about maybe adding on to the house, about Lily starting middle school in a few years, about Charlotte's new consulting business, and Ethan's dreams of maybe opening his own shop someday. "Do you ever regret it?" Charlotte asked in the darkness. "Taking a chance on me? On all the complications I brought into your life?" Ethan pulled her closer. "Not for a single second. You didn't bring complications. You brought color and light and joy. You brought yourself. And that's the best gift anyone's ever given me. Even better than that wrench set Lily got you for Christmas?" "Okay, second best." That wrench set was pretty amazing. Charlotte laughed and snuggled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, strong and steady and alive. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, now and always. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, and in the knowledge that they'd found what they'd both been searching for without knowing it. Not perfection, not rescue, but partnership, understanding, a reason to keep showing up day after day, choosing love even when it was hard. Outside, Riverside slept under a blanket of stars. The rain that had brought them together was long gone, replaced by clear skies and endless possibilities. And in a small house on Maple Street, 3 people who'd been lost in different ways had found their way to something unexpected and extraordinary. They'd found each other. And in doing so, they'd found themselves. The end was really just the beginning of family dinners and shared laughter, of scraped knees and school plays, of quiet mornings and busy evenings, of all the ordinary, beautiful moments that make up a life lived fully and honestly and together. Charlotte had walked past Ethan's house on the worst night of her life, ready to give up entirely. And Ethan, drowning in his own grief, had looked up at exactly the right moment and seen someone who needed the same thing he did, a reason to believe that tomorrow might be better than today. They'd given each other that reason, and then they'd given each other so much more. In the years that followed, they would face challenges. Ethan's shop would struggle during a recession. Charlotte would grapple with whether to return to a more active role at Vision Tech. Lily would navigate the complicated teenage years with both parents by her side. But they would face those challenges together, with honesty and patience and the certainty that they'd chosen each other for good reason. And on quiet, rainy evenings, when the sound of water against the windows brought back memories of that first night, Ethan and Charlotte would look at each other and remember how close they'd come to missing this. How easy it would have been for him to look away, for her to take that final drive to the coast, for both of them to remain trapped in their separate loneliness. But they hadn't looked away. They'd seen each other, really, truly seen each other, and that had made all the difference.